Walk us through the key findings of this report.
Yeah, so like you rightly said, it's looking good, decent, I would say. But when you compare the average of the first 3 months of 2019, which is I think at about 53.6, to the first 3 months of 2017, which was at about 57.4, you would recognize that the pace has moderated. So coming from a high of about 59 in May 2018 and to where we are now, the pace had moderated. It's not surprising, and we largely expected this, largely because, going into the election cycle, I mean, a lot of corporates were unsure as to, okay, what's going to happen? Is the incumbent going to win again, or is there going to be an opposition? So there was a bit of slowdown. They wanted to be clear about what policy direction is probably going to be afterwards in case there's a change in government. I guess now that that is out of the way, they can now make better financial decisions to say, oh, okay, we know that this is what we're going to get, then we can work with that at least for the next 4 years. So
those bits of uncertainties that we saw did reflect in the moderation, to use your word, of the PMI ratings that we are seeing now. Now, I see the main positive for this latest survey is set to be an accelerated expansion of business activity, with growth quickening to a 3-month high on the back of, now, I find this interesting, improved customer demand. Yes. So what's spurring that?
So it's a mix, right? So January, February, if you followed it, customer demand was quite low, right? And when they say improved, they're saying it was improved month on month. So when you compare February to what we saw in March, it was improved. But I still don't think it's definitely still not at the levels we saw, for instance, in the first quarter of last year, where we were basically just, not far out of the recession, and sentiment started to improve. But I mean, obviously, now, again, like I said, people are now starting to make decisions. So the guys that need to import stuff, or the corporates that need to import stuff, or the consumers that also need to get things done, are now going about their strategy, going about their work. And in that light, we think that over the coming months, we could start to see the uptick in this number. So we think that from here on out, the headline PMI should actually begin to, move up, to trend upwards again, at least over the coming months.
So, well, help me understand this contrast that I see: slower rise in new businesses, but on the flip side, output growth quickens.
So, again, like I said, there's a lot of mix and match.
It's a mix.
There's a lot of mix and match in it. Remember, anything above 50 signifies a growth. So anytime you see anything above 50, you probably hear commentary goes, oh, there was a growth, right? But the growth, how fast is the pace of growth is what it is. So output is increasing. If output is not increasing, then you probably not see the headline PMI increase at all. But when you look at new orders again, so let me break it down. So there are a lot of segments. There's new orders, there's output, there's employment. So in each of those different
metrics,
get
to employment, but finish your thoughts.
So on each of those different metrics, you see whether it's going up slightly or it's going down. So if it's going up, they'll tell you, oh, there's an improvement, it's faster improvement in that. But if it's going down, then they'll tell you, oh, okay, it's moderated. So for new orders, for instance, it drops to about 16-month low. So which means that, which again, you can again link to consumer sentiments to say that new orders are not as strong, but in terms of backlog of work, they're still there. So
they have to execute
the backlog of work first before you get to the new order. So this just is a mix and match. It's a very...
So to the employment metric, I see here, any news about employment increasing is good news for the macro. So I see employment increase for the 23rd successive month, albeit modestly. What drove that up?
So first, let me use a caveat there. It's from a low base, right? So you compare it to 2015, 2016, where we saw a lot of layoffs by most of these companies, right? So for instance, they laid off, say, 100 staff. Now, because sentiment started improving, they started seeing demand, they felt that we needed to add a few more people. So if you lay off 100, and now maybe you've gotten 10 back, employment is improving, but not necessarily at the pace that, and this is just private sector we're looking at here. And we're just trying to gauge business sentiment, right? So it's improving, no doubt. The private sector, they're employing a few more people to help with the backlog of work, but not necessarily the kind of headline number, employment number we're looking at, which is, of course, more broad-based than what we see. But they're employing people. They're employing more people because of the backlog of work that they are seeing.
So we're seeing output price inflation at 8-month low. If your latest data suggests that inflationary pressures remain muted at the end of the first quarter of 2019, help us understand what that is indicative of, essentially.
So essentially, I mean, it's not far off from what you've seen in the headline inflation. Headline inflation is basically at 11.3. That was the reading in February. And I think it was just slightly above. It's been very sticky for the past 6 to 7 months. And again, that basically points to the fact that we've seen a period of very stable exchange rate. Remember, I mean, I think the sense has always been that headline inflation has always been very vulnerable to exchange rate shocks. So when we saw the depreciation to a couple of years ago, we saw cost of production for corporates increase. And because the structure of Nigeria's inflation is more cost push, then inflation rose significantly. But now that you've had a period of, almost a 2-year period of fairly stable exchange rate, those numbers are now moderating.
So when you see ease in softening for new business slowing down in your report for the previous findings, this just brings to my mind the fact that PEBEC, the Ease of Doing Business Committee, did organize an event last night encouraging those who had been instrumental to the rise of ease of doing business in Nigeria. Would you say that this is not reflecting on the private sector at some level yet? Is it not trickling down? If you say new business growth is slowed down, but we have all those drives for ease of doing business.
So it is. So you know, when you're saying ease of doing business, you're talking about business, you're basically talking about FDIs, right? Or maybe a larger part of it is FDI. So what do you think is encouraging guys to come into corporates to come into Nigeria and, you know, come and do business in Nigeria? I mean, yes, the ease of doing business might be better, but then you still have to look beyond that and look at the macros. Are there potentials for growth? Are there government regulations that would help support my growth when eventually I bring in my money?
Are new businesses encouraged to come in as opposed to just facilitating
just come in? So, I mean, it's one thing for me to come in, easily. It's another thing for me to actually see potential. It's another thing for government regulations to actually favor my business to grow.
Thank you very much for your time on